All right, we're now recording, and this is the first topic of after the Usuri retrospective. We kind of rounded off with that retrospective with a classic tech trouble. Uh, so sorry about that. Where here is, I mean, let's get started with our first agenda item, and this is from Hayeksin, optimizing query speed for share snapshots.
Me?
Yes,
Oh,
we can hear you now.
uh, oh, um, uh, recently I look the code. Uh, uh, I found there is a point to op to optim mm, uh to to improve uh I I write something here. Um,
Yes, feel free to type it out as well,
uh,
and we can
where,
follow along.
where I can. Okay. Mm, as I write here, uh, uh, I uh, I found I found a bug has merged. It is about to prove the speed of share list. It put the list and offset to the database. When we uh, uh, when we share list commander, I found the when we will uh, list share snapshot, it has this problem also. Uh, Except and and I found the fuzzy matching logical is in the API layer. I think we can to uh, approve this to uh, to improve the speed. Mm, puts,
I think you mean this change from the train cycle. It was from Carlos,
yeah, I can. Okay.
and
This one is related to the shares list operation, which is being now addressed by MyOU. And there is other ones regarding snapshots, shared networks, and some other entities, which I have already reported as well to the Launchpad. So
okay.
I mean, I think Haitin is referring to the shared snapshots list, which is slow as well. And he wants to improve the speed for those queries as well. So it's going to be an improvement similar like the one that was completed for the shares, but now for shared snapshots. And we have that for a lot of other operations. I got the bug. I have reported in that time here.
Yeah,
So I'm going to pass the link so all of us can see the link. So let me put this in the chat as well. And I will put it in the PTG planning pad. Oops, the PTG planning pad, no, this other one.
I see. So we've reported this bug only for we've fixed this bug only for shares, but then you reported a combined bug for snapshots, group snapshots, messages. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
I
Okay. Cool. I think I've seen
yes.
this is a known issue. And if you're interested in working with that, I mean, this is an open bug. You should probably assign it to yourself, especially the, I mean,
Yes, I have noticed this I have noticed this bug, but I found the fuzzy matching can improve the speed more.
okay. So
Uh,
what are we doing currently with the fuzzy matching? I'm not, I don't recall if we are doing it, via Python or if we're pushing it down to the database layer.
uh, you speak too fast.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I meant, are we currently not sending this down to the database layer for all, entities, or is this only for snapshots?
Can you write something in the pad?
Let me rephrase that. So by fuzzy matching, you mean the ability to get lists of shares that are named like um, a particular string, right? So shares like, um, starting with, finance star. So what we mean over there is get me all the shares that have been named starting with finance. And so we'd basically say finance, I mean, we get finance 1, finance 2, finance X, whatever matches that string. So is that what you mean by fuzzy matching?
Uh,
Let me see if I can get you a code link. See that. I am sorry, I'm not that fast today, but here is one place where we're doing a massive share filtering, right, in the database, and we're looking at a bunch of different metadata. So column or adder operation like in the database to implement fuzzy queries. I think that's what you mean, because we added that logic recently. I mean, not very recently. Let me see that. It was a spec. Man, my search foo is not working today. I recall it was done as a specification, but I don't see that spec at all on our specs list. Oh, okay. So we are going through we're doing this fuzzy matching in the API layer using Python, and we could actually be doing this in the database. Yeah, you're right. It's possible we didn't explore that optimization at that time. If that is the case, this is definitely a bug and can be solved as a bug fix. We don't need a spec for either of these, which is one pushing the limit and offset down to the database, as well as pushing fuzzy matching for names down to the database. We shouldn't be doing either of these via Python. I think we were doing that because SQL Alchemy was missing some features, but that's not the case anymore.
I can understand what you said.
Yeah, let me give you a code link.
Uh, I um, I think about this. I can.
Awesome. I think we're in agreement there. I think uh, both these issues can be treated as bug fixes. And I mean, since we will not be changing anything in the API, these bug fixes can even be backported to older releases because they will not affect anybody. They should not be affecting anybody in a negative fashion, as long as we have support in SQL Alchemy to perform these fuzzy matches or the limits and offset filtering, which we know we do because we've taken bug fixes back to the Queen's release. And all right, does anything else need to be said about this? Thank you.
I think you are on mute, Gautam.
And I've been talking all along. Okay, classic. All right. No, I meant thank you for bringing this to the meeting, Haixin, uh, and we can take it forward from there with bugs and treat them as bug fixes and backport them to older releases. And I think we're ready to move on to the next topic. Does anybody have anything to say about that previous topic? If Nope. Okay. So let's move on to the next topic, which is TC goals for the Victoria cycle. And I have at least one link that should be working. So here's the Victoria cycle selected goals. And you will see the proposals in an Etherpad. And many of these other goals that have been merged, but they are in the placeholder stage, which is proposed goals. So let me give you that. So that's the place where you would find the proposed goals and such. At this point, folks are obviously discussing which of these proposed goals will they be moving into the selected goals. We typically pick up two goals, and as you're aware, this team has always been delivering on both goals from release to release. So let's speak a bit about the first one here, which is already merged, and what it takes for us to get this work done. And it's basically switching legacy Zuul jobs to native. And a little bit of a historic context here for folks that were not part of this when Zuul v2 was around. Zuul v2 version 2 was basically based on Jenkins, and Jenkins. We used to write these Jenkins jobs using a Python plugin called Jenkins Job Builder, and so we'd define a job in YAML format, and then we'd allow Jenkins to pick it up. Because there was this conversion that was going on and such. But Zuul v3 is a complete CI/CD system that has no need for Jenkins anymore. It has its own test runners and stuff, and it's all based on Ansible. So it gives us a whole lot of flexibility in terms of defining jobs and creating pipelines and stuff like that. So this community has been using Zuul v3 successfully for over 2 years now. And when this transition happened between Zuul v2 and v3, all of our previous testing logic had to be converted for it to work on Zuul v3. And so what they did was they ran a script that would take all of the Jenkins job builder steps that we had and output them into bash files and output them into a Ansible playbook that would invoke bash commands and stuff. Hi Luigi. So glad to have you here. I was just giving them an introduction on what this goal is and such. So we as in the Manila team then had to take over these jobs and convert them at our own pace, right? So convert them into what? Convert them into native v3 jobs, which is basically saying that I mean, Ansible can be a whole lot better than just putting in massive bash files in there as hooks, as test hooks, and running them, right? So modularizing the test, I mean, these massive bash files into Ansible tasks, and then taking it from there. So it makes things a whole lot better for us, as we discovered. So I'll can share a few reviews with you at this point. Uh, and just a second. So here's a generic topic on Gerrit, and you can find a bunch of changes that have been proposed for this conversion. But if you want to look at stuff that we've already converted, you can go to the Manila Tempest plugin project and search for that same tag. And these are the changes that merged. And if you want the simplest one, I would suggest going to either LVM or ZFS on Linux, and you see how the job is structured and how we're pushing in configuration to the job, thanks to a lot of these templates and these Ansible roles that we are inheriting from and such. So that's all for introduction. And here is and we have Luigi join us. He's the goal champion across OpenStack projects for this goal of making sure that there are no longer these legacy jobs in any of these projects. At least that's the goal. And to get them all converted into this sort of Zuul v3 native format. And while I search for more links, Luigi, do you want to, give us a spiel or anything?
I think you summarized the issue perfectly. So, the only things I'd like to add is that when we first discussed about this, I think it was in Dublin, and I think at the time there were some issues with the third-party CIs, which were still relying on the old scripts. Now, I mean, it's totally external to the goal. Moving to Zuul v3 means that you can clean up the old scripts you have in all the old bash scripts. So that's just outside the goal, and it's all about your handling of the repositories. So, but do you know if the third-party CIs are also moving to Zuul v3, and those problems were solved?
No, that's a great question, especially for Manila and Cinder and such that have a lot of third-party CI systems, right? So we don't control these third-party CI systems via any configuration in Manila, but they have relied on certain things in the DevStack plugin or in the test hooks that are there in the Manila repository to run their CI systems. And they also continue if they are relying on these hooks. There's this other expectation that they are using DevStack Gate and are inherently legacy based jobs, whether they're using Zuul or just Jenkins or whatever it is that they're doing. They're relying on projects that we might not support any longer once the upstream has switched over completely to dropping the use of DevStack Gate. So we've not discussed this, so it's a good point to bring up.
Yeah, especially because before I forget, the idea is to if we manage to do everything before the end of this cycle, is to deprecate DevStack Gate. So DevStack Gate shouldn't work anymore when we branch Victoria. So that's something that third-party CI should be aware of if they're relying on that.
But when you say deprecation, would we start failing? Would these CI systems start failing on after Victoria is branched?
Yeah, because usually for each release, whenever a new release is branched, there are some changes that needs to be done in DevStack Gate. You can see them easily because there are not many changes in that repository, and that's basically adding the knowledge of the new branches the new branch and some information about the grenade jobs and so on. And if those information, if this is not added to the DevStack gate, it means that the jobs relying on that are bound to fail, most likely.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense, which means we might need to communicate to folks that that are on the third-party CI, maintenance thing, but they don't really work upstream and such. This would be the biggest concern. Folks that are here in this room, you know what's happening, because we've been aggressively going at this goal from the end of the last cycle. And it is undesirable to rely on some of these scripts, especially, I was going to say, even relying on the pre-test and post-test hooks that we've had in Manila is not reliable anymore. But we'll keep it around until DevStack Gate stops working. If that's if that must be the limit, I guess, at which third-party CIs will start breaking. So if you operate a third-party CI with Zuul v2, you shouldn't be expecting DevStack Gate to work beyond Victoria cycle, and which, along with that, all of the test hooks and logic in the DevStack setups for Manila itself. Any concerns, questions? Remember, we're happy to help transition stuff. Help you transition your stuff by. There are these examples that we're creating based off the first party jobs that we are transitioning, as well as you have a resource in Luigi who's done this with multiple projects as well. So if you have any questions, you know who to reach out to. In terms of the timeline of how things go, right now, what's happening is we're moving all of the jobs from the Manila repository that we were using on Manila Tempest plugin. We're actually creating these jobs directly on Manila Tempest plugin. This is because it's a branchless project, which means that we're importing Manila Tempest plugin at master for all branches of Manila. So if we create a job within Manila Tempest plugin, this job is automatically available for all branches of stable branches of Manila. And so we don't need to really, backport job changes and such multiple times. If we have to make a change, we can make it in Manila Tempest plugin, and not in older branches of Manila. So these jobs are all going to be named such: Manila Tempest plugin, testing, X driver. So the next step after this, after we've transitioned all of these Tempest jobs, is to go ahead and clean up the jobs from Manila in the master branch, and then do the same for all the maintained releases that we have. We're going to remove all of the legacy code that's there. We're going to delete those playbooks and switch over to these newer jobs, which are functionally the same or better. And you should be reading the commit message of each one of these jobs to see how it's either making the thing exactly the same one-to-one, or it is actually adding more test coverage, which is happening in some cases.
Did you add this information about which test replaces which other test also in the description of the new jobs? I haven't checked in details.
No, we've not called out the old job names, but we've called out what they test, and we're kind of using some short terms like, okay, this tests DHS is true with these protocols and stuff. Assuming that should be sufficient when you look at all the jobs in total, you'll see which ones have what kind of test coverage. But you bring up a good point about test coverage with these jobs in general versus the features that we have. We've not gotten there yet.
Okay, no, I was just mentioning because sometimes in order to make it easier to understand the exact scope of a new job, which replaces an old job, we sometimes people just added like a comment in the description saying former names for these jobs were legacy, blah, 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 and something, blah, 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 blah. But in this case, sometimes you are completely replacing a job with another job, which is not, I mean, or you're replacing like two jobs with a different jobs, which combines the feature of the two. So it's not exactly the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
Yeah, definitely. And if there is some place we can maintain this is in the Manila wikis or something if folks are interested. But I suppose the moment we do this, I mean, we're not going to actually care about the historic aspect of this. And the reason I say that also is because we're not, while we're testing an integration of OpenStack, we're not really using these jobs in other projects. And we are in a way weird in one aspect because I mean, we've never built these jobs for sharing. Maybe now we are ready for that. Um, so and every time I look at a job that I'm converting, I'm going on code search and seeing if somebody else relies on it. So that those were the that's the reasoning. Cool. Any concerns? So once we get these changes backported to Manila and we've gotten rid of all of the Manila legacy jobs, the next step is to touch on Manila Tempest plugin and Manila UI. Victoria and I have been looking at these conversions so far, but if you're interested to help, please join us. There is a friendly Tiger page, like a sort of a personal tracker that we created to list down all of the items that we have. It looks huge at the moment because there are like 60 something items on there, but nothing to fear. They were created so it is actually granular. If folks are interested to give it a shot, come help us pick up one of those cards and just talk to me or Victoria. We can give you examples of what we have done, and many a times it might be a lot of copy paste and a few trial and errors before you get a job done with. And we have not yet started on Python Manila Tempest, Python Manila Client or Manila UI. So you're welcome to help there as well. All right. And the other goal that we might get to work on is this transition of testing to Focal Fossa, which is the Ubuntu 2004 LTS release. And I mean, my belief is that if we convert all of these jobs by that time, we should get this goal completed automatically for us, because these jobs that we have rely on a base job that comes from Tempest repository. I mean, I don't know it. Yeah, from the Tempest repository, and if that job gets converted to using Focal Fossa on master, we should have testing automatically. And we might see some things break, especially on the first party drivers, which rely on packages that come from the distro. And we have seen this happen when we converted our master jobs from Ubuntu 16.04 to 18.04 as well. So we should be able to react to those and get those completed. So this goal seems far more easier once we get the other one completed.
Yeah, and that's the case. I mean, I've seen the discussion on the TC channel, and the idea behind the acceptance of this goal is that the priority should go to the conversion to Zuul v3, because if you convert, as you said, if you convert to Zuul v3, you get the migration, at least the structural part of the migration, the conversion of the migration for free, and then you need to fix the failure, as you said, that are specific to your project. but you don't need to also fight with the legacy jobs. So really don't touch the legacy jobs and port them to Focal. Just convert them to Zuul v3 and then fix the rest later.
Yes. Awesome. Any questions, concerns about these two goals before we move on? I said I personally, I mean, neither me nor Victoria nor Luigi, we run third-party CI. We don't. We probably did in our past lives, but I mean, we've lost context of what it takes to actually stand up a CI system and report upstream and all of that stuff. So you will need to, I mean, get your hands dirty with this ASAP. Otherwise, you might end up breaking by the end at the end of the cycle, because we're actually going to drop support to some of these things. So that's the call out for today, I guess, and the action item for folks that have third-party CIs to maintain.
Yeah, we'll have a time that we are lacking of third-party CIs also. So probably this is going to break the ones there are left in running some jobs.
Exactly.
We
Yep.
have a roadmap to move our CI that is currently running Zuul v2 to Zuul v3, but probably maybe we are not planning to do these on Victoria, since we have a lot of things in the backlog to do. But the good part is that we have to update this at some time. So as soon that this start breaking things, we have to move more people to work with Zuul v3. But yeah, we have to do this right now. There is no other way, or we cannot merge things.
Exactly. Yeah, it's breakage-based priority,
Yeah.
but I've seen that happen before, so I sympathize.
Yeah, after start failing, this is going to the top of the priority, because we need this CI working on it.
Exactly.
If I can just steal another second,
Mhm.
if you the suggestion we in Cinder we gave to the third-party CI, there are many others, and they are mostly managing the things there on their own. But there is the Software Factory project, which is basically a distribution of Zuul and other components, and they are very much working with the community. It's the same infrastructure which is used in the RDO project, and they have some documentation already. They have some other documentation which is being worked on where they explain how to install and integrate with the OpenDev infrastructure in Gerrit and so on. So that you probably have other I don't know your exact needs, but then you probably have other infrastructure in place, but you may want to take a look at that. I put the link in the chat, and they are also the people there are always answer on IRC and on the list. So just a suggestion. So.
Awesome. And where do you find these people on IRC? Will they be on the RDO channel?
They are usually in the Software Factory channel. It's in the contact page of the site.
Awesome. Thanks.
Great. Yes. So I added a note for you, Dan, Douglas, and me. We have that list of third-party maintainers. Maybe an action item from here is to take distill this, tell people that things are going to break, and if they'd like to start looking, here's a place that can help and such.
Agreed.
All right. So what next? We on that goal Etherpad, there were a bunch of things that we were looking at, which potentially could be goals for the Wallaby release. And we wanted to actually try and understand what the impact is so far. So we created another Etherpad, yet another Etherpad called Manila To Dos, and we just started, brainstorming a bunch of things that we should start looking for and filling up. And a bunch of these are tech debts, and that's what
Nothing.
goals usually. Sorry, go
Sorry
ahead.
to interrupt. I call Railo for the oslo-privsep discussion. So he's on the call right now. Maybe we can cover that one first.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, no rush.
Welcome
I
back.
feel like that I'm important talking in that way.
No, no, absolutely. I was going to ping you and tell you, but thanks, Victoria. So we finished talking about the other goals, and here is what's upcoming. And let's start talking about this one, which was migrating to PrivSep. Actually, no, that's not what Raildo was going to help us with. It was the policy one, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay.
the secure default policies.
Just give me a second while I grab that.
I think there's line 14 on that Etherpad.
And there is no goal doc yet, is there?
I don't know on the Manila side. Like, I can talk a little bit in general about
Yeah,
why we
that
are
would help.
doing that. Okay, so like for those that are like working for a while on OpenStack may have noticed that like it's really hard for operators to deal with policy in general. So like it's something that we usually say is that like every customer needs to be changing or managing that by itself, which is not that great for the usability side. We know that it's really easy to break a deployment if we like mess up with uh, policies and the rules and so on. And also like for the security side, we want to avoid uh, users to have like wrong access for the APIs and that kind of thing. So we start this effort to be creating default roles and defining the policy properly with those roles across all the OpenStack services. We started that on Keystone, 2 or 3 release from now. So Keystone it was the first one, and things are look great over there. And we moved that for actually like Nova. It was the second project that started work on that. They are pretty close to have it finished. And the idea is like having the services implementing these roles. So there's a few links on this Etherpad that explains like these contexts and what is the goals. But basically we have 3 roles that are predefined. That is called admin, member, and reader. That's like pretty simple. That admin can be able like to be changing, creating, deleting resource and that kind of thing. Member will only be able to access their own resource, and reader you'll be basically the one that is really only he can like see things. So there is me and another co-leader that just joined the call as well here. So we are pushing these efforts. I saw that you guys have these as one of the goals. So unfortunately, we don't have the time to be like implementing that in all of the services, but we are here more to help and guide to have this done. So I would like to like I would like to know if you guys already have some volunteer, or I mean, if you guys have checked out this code, have any ideas. We have some questions open on the Nova side, for example. There are some that will be affecting other services, and we'll be discussed that on the PTG. But I believe that uh, that's a good time to start work on that and start already implementing that across the OpenStack services.
Absolutely. So I think we have a lot of questions. We have not started working on this. We did start discussing it, and it was probably within smaller teams, not even in the upstream general community context. We've had folks that came with bugs that said, I tried to change a policy to go from admin to everybody in a given tenant, but then the things broke because there are hard-coded admin checks elsewhere in the code and stuff. So the first step for us was trying to actually convert all of those hard-coded admin checks into policy-based checks, rather than saying if context is admin, actually enforce a policy and bail out in case you're not authorized to do something. So that part we was in the plans, but we did not anticipate the work for creating this reader or observer role. I mean, what is happening with the other projects is in terms of, are these, I mean, is supporting this role causing any changes to the existing policy, or is this something where we have to look through our code and ensure that if somebody switches policy to reader, everything still works?
A good question. I mean, like, as we said, like that previously, we asked every customer to create their own roles. So since we are creating the roles, if they're not applied in the policy, the role by itself, it doesn't mean anything. So that's why we started that on Keystone. So the idea is like Keystone already have those roles. The idea now is push the other projects to be using those roles. So uh, it will won't affect what is existing already working on their policy. And like as usual, these pulse files on the upstream, it's more some kind of like example. That's not yet how it is used on production. Like usually the customers create their own roles, their mapping, and update that on pulse files. And that's what this idea came from, to make that easier, to make when someone deploys OpenStack, and if the projects are already using those roles configured previously, it'll make easier because they know that things are already configured. So like any project is affected by now by default, but the idea is like make that easier for the ones that will be deploying Manila to already have their roles configured properly by default.
Yeah.
And don't have them to be like deploying and like changing the box manually, because we know that they can break things on Manila. So that's what Keystone Red does, and that's what Nova are doing.
Okay.
And some services will start work on that on this cycle.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think with Manila, and much like Cinder, we've believed that there could be a regular user, a member, and an admin role. We've probably never believed that I mean, or rather, never planned for an observer role. That is one thing that will change, and see this thing. So, are we anticipating that anybody that's creating these custom roles is going to actually create them out of these templates, these three things, and nothing more, right? Like they're not expecting a combination of these or some such thing.
We can help you guys with like creating this mapping. That's the idea that we want to bring to help, is like how can we help on the like security side or on the build side to understand like what means being an admin on your API, which means being a member or a reader if you guys want to, and just mapping that to the post. That's something that we can be discussing along the cycle. We
Yeah,
don't need to be discussing that right now. But the idea is like making sure that you guys have the basic policy work properly configured and implemented on the Manila side. So when we apply those roles on the pulse file, it will be really like use it, you'll be enforced. So we do that using Oslo policy, that like this common library across all the OpenStack servers. So the idea is to like have the same base implementation. We can bring these details during the cycle as well. As I'm saying, like it's something that we can be joining your meetings and
yeah,
trying to help explain a little bit how to implement it. But since I believe that you guys don't have like a huge policy, a huge API that needs to be used, that will be more simple to be done. But the idea is like we already have this Oslo pulse checker and generation for these pulse files. The idea is like make sure that you guys are using it and help on like matching your APIs with the proper access for each predefined role. That's the
I
idea.
agree. Okay, so I mean, we have some action items here. One is to probably take a look at what the Keystone implementation is and what Nova's, what's the effort that's gone into Nova, and try and understand what I mean, what steps we need to take to make sure that we don't break when this new system scope policies are introduced. Um, and the other was this tech debt item that we had, which was get rid of all of the um, uh, hard-coded policy checks that are there in Manila, and this might very well be the precursor step to what to supporting this new role.
Yeah, definitely. We had a previous effort to move for pulsing code. Not sure if you guys were aware of it, but we moved those checks to be predefined on code and not only on the policy JSON, so we can like having that in the code properly.
Yeah.
A bunch of projects have made it. I didn't check Manila.
Oh,
I
we
can.
did too. I mean,
Okay,
so right
awesome.
now we can work without a policy .yaml or proc.json file.
Okay, that's great. It'll make much easier to finish this migration. I put in the link on the Etherpad for the Keystone patches related with these different roles. Uh, there's a lot of them because the Keystone API is huge. But the idea is to use it as an example. So like it's pretty like similar between those patches, but uh, the idea is like understand more what are APIs, what each API is for Manila. It's supposed to be have on the other backside, like what these roles should be accessing and that kind of thing. That's what we can be discussing later. Also, I can point for you guys for the Nova patches as well. Maybe it helps to get another perspective, one more newer, since they are the latest project that implemented. Uh, but as I said, it's not something that we need to get in the details right now. It's more like make sure that we have volunteers, or the priority of that is on this cycle. And I'm glad to help during the cycle as much as I can. As I said, like I'm not a Manila guy. I hope to be helping more, but it's hard to be doing
No,
uh,
I agree.
contributing for all the projects.
Yep.
But it's not a huge change, and I can see a great benefit on the operator side and helping the customers to be deploying that much easier. And like the idea is, as I said, like this is a cross project effort. We want to have these on as much OpenStack projects that we can. So right now we are talking about like having this implemented on Barbican, Cyborg, Manila, Cinder, Neutron. So that's the idea. It's having all the servers configuring these default pulse rows. And when people deploy OpenStack, they already know that they are secure on that side and their roles are defined properly.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much for that explanation.
Yeah, sure.
Are there any questions from anybody else? So we have a few action items that we can take off from this meeting. Thanks for recording them, Vicky. And we'll follow up with you, Raldo, as soon as we, get done with this PTG and get to work.
Yeah, sure. Please feel free to ping me, RC, or invite for your meetings. I'm glad to help
Thank you.
the way I can.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a great PTG, guys.
Thanks. Okay. And if there's nothing more to be said about that, let's quickly for a second take a look at the next one and then get on our break. I know it's been a long time since the last one, but I just wanted to get through this, and there probably isn't going to be a lot to say about this. This is another goal candidate, and right now I think what I'm looking for with respect to this one, which is migrating from Oslo root wrap to oslo-privsep, is basically a internal Manila champion, right? I need someone to lead this goal and to see what's the effort that's required for us to get this migrated. And in case you'd like to help here, which is again a huge help and way forward for this project to maintain its security policies and such, please let me know, and we'll definitely get you situated with respect to reviews and as well as any work items and such. That's all that I wanted to add about these TC goals that are coming in, and they're getting discussed at a wider OpenStack context. Not all of them are going to be there for this upcoming cycle, so take a look at these and volunteer for us. Okay, I think at this point we should probably take a 10-minute break, and on the other side of that 10-minute break, we will talk about we'll switch up topics a little bit, and we'll talk about the OpenStack client when we come back with Victoria and Maury, and then if we have some time, we'll talk about the experimental features before wrapping up for the day. How does that sound? All right. You'll have longer than 10 minutes because it's, you'll have 11 minutes to come back, and we'll get started at 16:20 UTC. Hello, and welcome back. We're gonna get started with the next topic. Hope you got a good break. And the next topic on the agenda is an interesting one. We've been working on it for a few cycles now, a couple of cycles now. And to talk about it, here we have Maury Tam, who did a bunch of work in the last cycle to get us started really for real, and also complete a bunch of important, interesting things. And also Victoria Martinez. Do you guys want to take it away?
Okay. So I can, I guess, talk about what I've done so far, and Victoria can take over what's yet to be done, maybe. So this was the project that was offered for outreach internships. And well, I started actually, there was some work done already. So share, create, delete, list, and show was already been implemented. So I added set and set. And then also I worked on adding share access rules and share types. And now the last one, quotas, is still under review. Thanks for the great review, Gotham. I'll try to get to it this week. And so, yeah, that's the situation right now. That's how far I've gotten. Maybe Victoria, you wanna take it from here?
Thank you, Maury. Gotham, we have the list of the added commands and what is left to do on that etherpad that is linked right above where you're writing. So we don't need to write everything down again. So yeah, thank you, Maury. She has been doing an amazing work on adding those commands. Honestly, it is taking time for us to review that. So sorry about that, Maury. But well, as she mentioned that we have the quotas patch on the review, so more eyes there would be appreciated. And we need to define which are the priorities for the next features we have in there. If you can access the SEPAD, probably you can see that there are a lot of them, and maybe our priorities change it a bit, because at least I was thinking about, for instance, there were some features that were listed as experimental when we wrote a spec that are not anymore experimental, such as share groups. So I see several action items in here. The first one would be to say, okay, which priority do we have for each of the commands? We need to organize ourselves, so we're gonna start saying, okay, we start proposing different patches for the different commands we are missing, and we do it in an organized way. Maybe when we get to cover the list of the commands that are prioritized, then we can start continuing submitting the less maybe required commands that we have in there. And the second thing is about enhancements. As Mari noted, actually, when she started working on this, there are commands that are like across projects, such as quotas, services, availability zones, limits. Basically, we are saying, okay, OpenStack share quotas, I don't know, list. And to be honest, we have quotas for every single service in OpenStack. So it would be nice to stop duplicating code and have a cross-project implementation. I reached earlier today the OpenStack SDK's team, and they are having that discussion right now on another room. So another action item that comes from there is to reach them out and see how we can unify our efforts and ship a better, a follow-up for this work. But I think that's something we can do afterwards. So I don't know if we have anybody from the CERN team on this call, which maybe can help us because they are one of the main user for this one. Oh yeah, Spiros, you are on the call.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
Hi, Spiros. So if you can go over the list and help us prioritize what we have in under not implemented, then we can continue working on stuff. And of course, anybody else that is interested on contributing to this also is welcome to do it. So I think that's it. I don't know if anybody wants to add something else.
No, thank you for that, Vicky and Maury. And so I think the action items here seem to be, let's prioritize what's left and see and basically we're asking for help to get them implemented. Given that Maury's completed her internship, and a bulk of the work to get the framework in has already been done. So adding the commands is actually going to be an easier task than what she had set out for her when she was doing her internship. And of course, I think she already added a framework for even testing it. So with unit and functional tests. As we're adding these commands, also expected to maintain the same kind of test coverage or even better than what we have with the Manila client at this point. So that's one about the priorities. We'll come back to that in just a second. The other one being the common code stuff that we have to follow up with. Vicky and I, if you don't mind, Vicky, we can take a look right after this meeting and see what. The idea is to not have our own share commands to do some common actions such as listing availability zones and listing quotas, listing limits and such. If we can provide some sort of hooks down to OSC that can get called. So we'll follow up on that, but parallelly, I think it's worth taking a look at the quotas patch that Maury already has submitted, which looks great for the most part. Few concerns that I noted yesterday, but definitely looking for more feedback on that. So let's go back to the priority and the help aspect, right? So thanks for that Etherpad that makes things a whole lot clearer and transparent. So if you look at that Etherpad, folks, you will see a lot of things in the non-implemented section, but they've been categorized already into the resources. So if you feel like you could help with these, please let Victoria and Maury know. But right now, I think we can start picking them off and restacking them based on what we think is the priority. And I'm actually looking for help from Spiros here because they run a production OpenStack cloud, and they're looking to use OSC all through. So if you can help us stack rank these, that'd be great.
So I will discuss it as well with my team, but at the top of my head, to what we look for shares as next steps are mostly commands that have to do with resize. We have and snapshots. So we haven't enabled it, our CFFS backend to support this yet. So just note that when I say Manila usage, it's 99% usage of CFFS. We're currently in Mimic, but we haven't enabled resizing and snapshots yet in the SF backend. So with the Kubernetes API, CSI, and actually the Manila CSI have implemented the resize commands. This is the next thing we will look into, implementing and supporting more commands that have to do with this. I will double check it with my team, but probably this is the most important part for us. Also, some background why we wanted the support for the client is because the OpenStack client supports Kerberos authentication, and in our organization at CERN we have Kerberos enabled as authentication everywhere. And we offer the users some bastion hosts, some login hosts that they log in, and they access to the OpenStack APIs through there. So for example, when users work with Kubernetes clusters, they don't use Kerberos actually, but when they want to inspect what's going on in their cluster or check their shares, move them around, like mount them in other nodes, like dedicated VMs, they usually use these bastion hosts, and authentication through there is done with Kerberos. For admin operations, we're not that, it's not that important for us because we use different credentials, service accounts that are password based. So we can still use the Manila client or an SDK because usually it's a program like Rundeck or Mistral that interacts with Manila. So I think the most important part for us is resize and snapshot, as I mentioned. If you have any questions for our use case, happy to answer. And also to note that most of our use cases, most of our users are using CFFS through Kubernetes. We are having migrated to the Manila CSI that will be discussed on Friday. But most of the use cases are using the first implementation that Robert Vass extracted in our team and continued in Red Hat.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, if you could get back to us on the stack rank list as well as, I mean, feel free again. I think what Vicky and Maury and all of us are looking is basically help in terms of the code itself as well as reviews. And thank you for doing that in the last cycle. If we want to actually complete this, we need more of that. At this point, I mean, at least at Red Hat, we don't really have this as a top priority item. So we're happy to help as you know, as and when time permits for us, opportunistically even help write some of these commands ourselves. But certainly looking for more help.
Yeah, as soon as we move deeper to CFFS with resizing and snapshots, we will definitely need these commands. And also, I think some interns are planned as well.
Oh, great.
In our organization. So probably we will get more help from there.
That's nice. Great. Any other concerns or questions at this point regarding this effort?
I do have a comment, and it's about asking for reviews. So if you're an operator of a cloud and you're planning to use OpenStack client CLI, please help us with the reviews because we are defining a lot of aspects of the CLI, and this is the moment in which actually it's good to get the feedback so we make sure that the CLI you are getting is usable and it fulfills the expectations you have as an operator, well, to use this interface. So please, this is very important, and if you can help us with that, it will be highly appreciated.
Yeah, an aspect of that, I mean, just extending bits, I think between us in review conversations, we're having this stuff saying, wouldn't this be better this way and wouldn't this be better that way? But I think the whole motive over here is to drive that consistency and usability. So, and that doesn't come directly from us designing this from the perspective of a project in OpenStack. It comes from user feedback. So like Vicky said, please come let us know if we're doing something wrong, or you know, if you want it a particular way that's more usable or more consistent with your expectations.
I would like to add something here. So at the same time, I'm an operator at the SoundCloud, the ops teams, but also I'm a developer for the Magnum project, but I contribute to more projects. So usually when I bring feedback to OpenStack is from usually older, but members in my team that are only doing operations. So what frustrates them sometimes is if commands or even things in the API are not implemented similar to Nova or Keystone conventions, So usually the commands that were firstly added in the OpenStack client, as far as I know, are the Keystone ones, where manage project, manage user, manage service, or this pattern of interacting with the client is expected from operators. And at the same time, the abbreviations of noun verb iterations. So if you want to do something on an entity, usually it's a noun, and then it's a verb for the action, and then it's another noun that continues the action. So this is like as a general rule of thumb, and what usually are the expectations for people that don't contribute and don't even join sometimes these kind of events or sessions to design.
Yeah, agreed. And I think a part of this is what we've led with in the documentation for OSC itself, that we're trying to conform to. But many a times we have our own debates, like, hey, is this the way it's supposed to work, or is this what we're do we use set, or do we use some sort of a different verb, and stuff? What is consistent? What has Keystone done? What has Nova done? So I think that, I mean, if we're looking at Nova and Keystone, I think then we're doing the right thing, right? That's what you're saying.
More or less, yes. Or continue doing the wrong thing, but at least it's consistent, like across the projects.
Agreed. Awesome. So we have a few action items here. Spiros will give us more on the context of priority, if there is, after he discusses with his teammates. And of course, I mean, we've asked for help. Anybody is welcome to come in and help write these commands. But more importantly, right now, please do review Maury's changes, and that's how we'll drive this forward. Anything else about this topic, Vicky, Maury?
Nothing on my side.
Yeah, nothing for me. I can just say that I'm more than happy to continue deliver some patches, and I can take the two that were mentioned just now, and yeah, if you can review it, that would be great.
Oh, we're completely happy
To
to hear that. Thank you. Great. So let's move on to the next topic that we have. And this is to do with the graduation of experimental features. So going to be a much of Carlos talking, because he did a bulk of the job. So Carlos, do you want to take it?
Yes. About some months ago, we started talking about some features that were in the experimental state for a long time, and now we should consider start to graduating these features. So we decided that the first of them that should be graduated was the share groups feature, which we have already graduated in the Zuul release. So the code was all merged during the cycle, and there's still some documentation missing. So I intend to work on that documentation in this cycle. So in the next weeks, we can expect a patch for that. So I intend to update that. And there are also two other features that we have considered to graduate, which are share replication and share migration. And I've taken a look on those features and checked what would be the effort and what needed to be done. So for the share replication, I think that this may not take so long to be finished, since we, as far as I saw something, and I may be wrong about this, but we should only need to update the share replicas API in the Manila, and some other things in the Manila client and in the Manila template plugin as well. So we will need to update the documentation at the end. But it's kind of different from the share groups feature that we had like 4 APIs to graduate, and there was a lot more work than this one. But I intend to work on this probably this cycle, but I'm not sure if we should start right now, since the replication for JSS true was merged during the train release, and like the replication for JSS false has been in the code like for a lot time more than they for JSS true one. We haven't had any reported bugs for the core code, so it's a great signal, but I'm not sure how many deployments are using train, and how which of them are using JSS true. And so I don't know if it's the right time to do so. So I need more opinions on this, because if we decide to go down this with this and like graduate the share application in this release, we could do so, but don't know. And the same goes to share migration. No, share migration is something like we have only for JSS false, had been there for a lot of time, and we do not have for JSS true yet, and we do not know for sure when it's going to be implemented for JSS true. So I think this one maybe we could have some effort to graduate during this cycle, and I need some other opinions on this as well. So I think that's mostly these things are intended to bring. So if we decide to go and to graduate the share replication feature, I can just go and create a launchpad blueprint as I've created for the graduation of the share groups feature, and start working on it. So that's kind of it for these two other graduation features.
Yeah.
What do I think?
Awesome. Thank you for that summary. And that's, I mean, basically, I hope everybody got an idea of what the plans were, at least, and the effort that went in the last cycle to migrate and to graduate share groups. So any concerns with share groups as such at this point? Can we stop discussing that as an experimental feature from here on out? And we officially now just are talking about the other two, right?
Yes.
So we and Vicky brought this up a little bit when she spoke about the OSE support for this. We did not envision that OSE support will be part of the reason for graduation. We should at this point perhaps just treat it as one more thing in the list of things that is different from the Manila client and the OSE client, right? Which probably means that it gets more priority than other experimental features, but no more priority than anything else that's missing in the OSE stuff, unless that's what users feel, and for instance, what Spirosis team is going to tell us. But as the thing goes for share replication, the concern from Carlos is that we haven't had enough airtime for the DHSS true replication. But I was going to ask you, Carlos, how much change did the share replication API go through for DHSS true?
There was not that much changes. Most changes we have done was like regarding other APIs, other new APIs like share network subnets, which was something that made us able to do share replication for DHSS true. So the share replicas API itself was not that had not a lot of modifications. So that might not be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would think, because I mean, we've already modified a non-experimental API, which is share networks, to support spanning multiple subnets and stuff, which is going to become the basis of trying to do DHSS true replication. So I mean, keeping just the replica APIs as experimental may not serve, because if we have to make any changes, that would also involve the share network APIs. So we already have a way to to evolve the API through microversions. So at this point, I don't believe we need drastic changes to the replication API. If anything, we're gonna have to move it from microversion to microversion in case we're making any changes, and that's no different than any other Manila API.
Yeah, I agree.
Any concerns with that? I did want to call out that we have a light specification from the previous cycle where we were thinking about Coda control for the for share replicas in a different way than what is currently there. I mean, I guess we discussed two different ways of doing Coda control. One was the absolute quotas, and the other was share type driven quotas, where the administrators can set how many replicas can be there as a share type extra spec. And then we said that either of these, I mean, providing a way to do Coda control is going to be one of the graduation criteria. And with Carlos's work in the last cycle, we have quotas, the absolute quotas. We still don't have per share, per share type quotas for share replicas, but I mean, I should qualify that per share type quotas enforced as extra specs, where you can actually say, I want this share type to just have to just support 2 replicas per share, for instance. You can't do that today. You can say, I want X number of replicas for a given share type. And that may be good enough for most people, but this was also another ask that came in much before. But then we're not going to hold this feature for that particular thing, is my current understanding. Any concerns with that? It can come in as a logical evolution of the Coda system if we require.
I don't think I have any concern about that. And I've already drafted a patch for the share type extra spec, which we have discussed in the light spec that we merged in the previous cycle. And there was not a lot of changes in the share replica API. So the change was like minor, and I think it would not just like affect a lot the share replica API. So yeah, I think even if we decided to implement that and take that as a hard requirement, that I think that would not have a large impact on the whole thing of replication.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, so then that answers your queries, I guess, about graduation in the Victoria cycle. So from my perspective, and probably everybody on this call agrees, we should go ahead and do this for the Victoria cycle. And the share migration, on the other hand, good concerns. I don't know what all we have left. We're left to do. For one, I know we were looking to scale out the Manila data service. That was a big impediment for us to adopt it, for instance, within the Red Hat distribution of OpenStack, for instance. So it is that is a major bottleneck, but at the same time, is the API going to evolve with respect to that? That's still unsure. So if you're concerned about the share migration API being experimental, please speak up now, or let us know, because otherwise I like the idea of taking one of these in a given cycle, concentrating on it, and getting them out of this experimental phase. It is not trivial, as Carlos knows. Any concerns at all?
I think not. I cannot see anything that I should be concerned right now. So Don't know if other guys have something to be concerned about this.
Well, at present, I have just added an item over there saying we agreed to move it to the next cycle, which is the W release. And if that changes, I mean, I'm not saying that's set in stone. If anybody is watching this later or comes up with different ideas for it, please talk to us during one of the weekly meetings or bring it up in the rest of the PTG. Great. Anything else as, I mean, for this topic, Carlos?
I don't think so.
Awesome. We're actually on our target to wrap up. I did leave a 10-minute buffer for the end of the day wrap up. So just a quick recap of things that we did today. We got a lot of talking done. Firstly, thank you for participating in the retrospective and giving us these ideas about your about the bug grouping and such. And also for the discussion beyond your bedtime hike scene regarding share snapshots and other API slowness that you see currently. Thank you. We'll get them addressed as bug fixes, and thanks for driving that effort as well. We went through the TC goals and what we think is going to be accepted as a TC goal so that for this cycle, and we have I think good progress going with respect to that. Thanks for everybody contributing on that. We did quite an interesting informational on the secure default policies and the scoped policies that's coming from Keystone and Nova. And we have a lot to do in terms of that. We've taken those action items for to research and to get back in touch with Raldo and the folks that are working on that across the community. And we've said for oslo-privsep migration, we're looking for volunteers to do this for Manila. So if you're looking for some new feature to implement, this is a good candidate. Please get in touch with us. And then we had a good session with Maury, Victoria, and Spiros regarding the OSC client and all the things that are left to do and how we're going to do those things. And finally, just before this, we recapped the graduation of the experimental features. So did I miss anything? And unbeknownst to all of you, I've been taking a few screenshots, of course, apart from recording you. So I hope I got some smiling faces and not just me, because I knew when to smile. Anyway, so thank you all for joining today. It was a great session. Tomorrow we start at tomorrow we have two sessions. They're broken down into a session between 1500 UTC and 1700. So ending around this time. That's the first part of the session, and we'll be talking all things FFS with Victoria and a bunch of new people that are going to join us at 1500 UTC. There is going to be a break after, and I have a feeling that most of this crowd's going to be disappearing at 1545 because there's a parallel session going on in the O room regarding a new way to deploy Ceph and how O is adopting that and how RDO is going to work with that, etc. So we might wrap up early tomorrow. I'm just going to take a look at the topics and I will post an update on OpenStack Manila if we're going to do that. And we'll catch up at the second half of tomorrow for the second half of the meeting. That's between 2100 UTC and 2300 UTC. And we'll be talking with Douglas and Carlos regarding security services and about creating shares with two or more subnets. And we'll also be talking about new TC tags that we want to apply for in this cycle. and that's all that's there tomorrow. But if you'd like to if you'd like a slot to talk about something, please get in touch with me on IRC or just ping me after this. There's lots of other things going on in this PTG. I mean, if you're subscribed, check out the PTG bot. And awesome. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and hope to see you again tomorrow.
See you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, talk tomorrow.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you.